Hi. Just gonna hang on and see if anyone's around. I'm just gonna turn my notifications off. And you might be able to hear the music in the background. My daughter's outside with some friends, and my husband, they're putting up a tent in the garden. A tent in the garden that I will not be sleeping in. Okay, so I'm just going to hang on a sec, see if anyone is around. As I said, I would just do a quick live about, say hi if you're there so I can see who's around. We'll just do a little like or a love heart or something. Hello, love hearts and likes, yay. I said, oh, loads, thanks. I said I was going to do a live because I was in Amsterdam. When was I? Got back on Saturday. And hi, Alex. Alex from Ashby. Oh, Ashby. Where's Ashby? Is it in the UK? Somewhere. I'm not very good with geography. So I wanted to just do this video because one of the things that I've said loads of times on here... Oh, Jackie's here. Hi, Jackie. One of the things that I have noticed a huge difference by learning the 3 principles that I now coach other people is one of my biggest anxieties, shall we say, was about being away from home on holiday. Leicestershire. Oh, it sounds very de la Zouche. Sounds very French. And that was one of my... Oh, it's just telling me that I'm live, I know. One of my biggest situations where I would massively overthink things is being away on holiday. And part of that was triggered. The overthinking starts right from before I go away because I don't like flying. Because I'm a control freak, and the thought that I don't know enough about how the plane is in the sky in the first place, and that I cannot be in the front driving the plane. Hi, Bob. The fact that I can't be in the front driving the plane means that it's not comfortable for me at all. So one of the things that people ask me a lot on this coaching course that I do around anxiety is, because I talk about people getting insights, and it's people having insights that then gives them the change in their life, and they start to notice that they just have much more of an inner calm, and they don't necessarily know where it comes from, but actually it doesn't come from anywhere, it's innately in us. But what's happening is their mind is quieter, and so they don't get as anxious and as panicked through overthinking. And so I wanted to share one of the things, as I say, that I really didn't like is flying. And again, I've not hidden it, that I got on the flight this time for the first time in many, many, many years without either some kind of medication to calm me down. It's been a good while actually since I've had that, but either that or I would have a glass of wine. Now, probably only one glass, a large glass, but that would, I thought, would take the edge off so that I would be able to get on the flight, because I would convince myself that with absolutely nothing that I wasn't capable, and then I would start to overthink that I was potentially going to have a panic attack or something was going to happen, I was going to freak out on the flight, and so on and so forth. Those that have a fear of flying probably have very similar thought process around that. So, Jackie, if you're still there, can you just, am I on the coaching page? Just to make sure, I didn't check I was in the right place. So what I found this time is that because hi, Christine, because I didn't have any of that, I was very, very aware of my thinking pattern and the thoughts that I was having. And in a way that wasn't a bad thing, because actually I had a couple of insights whilst I was actually on the flight as to how much this is all thought-based. You don't get anxious feeling without anxious thought. You just do not get the feeling without the thought. Sometimes it feels very instantaneous, so it's kind of like the feeling comes from nowhere. It doesn't, it comes from the thinking. And so one of the things, now I'm not saying I was on that flight feeling completely at ease, because I absolutely wasn't. Yeah, okay, brilliant, thanks Jackie. I was absolutely not completely at ease. But weirdly, I kind of, well, not weirdly, I know why, but I I knew I was fine. I knew it was okay. Now, if you think on a very practical level in terms of fear of flying, flying is one of the safest ways to travel. Simple as that. We're far more at risk getting in the car, probably walking down the street on foot. You know, we know practically it's safe. But it doesn't stop us creating a scenario in our head that then creates a lot of anxious feeling that goes with that. And so it's just little things. And when people say, how do you get insights? I'll come back to the flight in a second. But when you get insights, the way you get insights and change around this is just simply by noticing things that I can tell you about thought and how the thought creates feeling. But for you to start to see for yourself in your own life, so you become like an explorer of your own experience and you see it for yourself. So here's one way I saw it for myself on the flight on the way to Amsterdam. If there's any turbulence in the air, any kind of bumping, and I mean, actually, I've never been on a flight where there's been loads of turbulence, been lucky, you know, it's never been that bad. But that doesn't mean that it's not felt that bad when I've been up in the air, because if I'm up in the air and there's any kind of movement, and I would probably say any movement other than very slightest, my stomach turns, I feel tight in the chest, and I start to panic. Like, somebody sat next to me wouldn't even know, but internally I'm going into complete panic because I say to myself, oh no, it's going to get worse, I can't stay on it, what if it's like this, what am I going to do? And it's not necessarily that I think the plane is going to fall and crash to the floor, it's that I feel like I'm not going to be able to cope whilst it's like that, because all sorts of things go on in my head about how uncomfortable it is and I don't know what's happening. Again, all of that stuff around me wanting to control a situation that I just can't control. So that's what would normally happen. And I had a really kind of an insight when I was landing on the flight, because what I realised is actually when the flight comes into land and I'm getting near to the ground, it can be really bumpy when you're landing, like literally can go like this. I've been on flights where it's been really bumpy on the land. And the interesting thing is that I have no thoughts about that whatsoever, because all I'm thinking is, we're landing, it's coming to an end. This experience that I don't like and I've been dreading for 2 days or whatever it is coming to an end. And that is my focus. And you can almost be seen to be like one of the few people on the flight who is sat almost giddy on a really bumpy landing. I'm not bothered by the bumps. And the interesting thing is I'm not bothered by the bumps. And I don't feel anxious in that moment because I'm having no anxious thinking about the bumps when we're landing, because all my thoughts are focused on the fact that it's nearly over. And so what I realised was that when I'm in the air, and might not even be that high up, but when I'm in the air and there's that bumping that's even less than when it starts to land, I feel terrible. But yet the same thing is happening. The same action, the same movement of the flight. In fact, it's probably a lot worse when landing. But the same thing, I'm experiencing the exact same thing. I.e., I'm experiencing a bit of a bump. And it's usually because we're going through clouds or whatever it is. But that's what I'm experiencing, the same thing. Yet it feels very different in the air to when I'm landing. Now, I'm not talking about right near the ground. I'm talking about where I can just see the ground. As soon as I can see the ground. Now, on a practical level, I know that it's just as unsafe there if we were going to do a crash landing as it is another 10,000 feet up in the air. It makes no difference. But yet I feel completely different. I feel so much calmer whilst I can see what's on the ground, whilst it's landing, because my thoughts about it are different. And that's an example really of an insight. And then when I realised that, like, it doesn't bother me, no matter how, like the plane could literally be near enough turning upside down on a landing and I do not have any thoughts about it. And I kind of almost see it a bit like it's on a roller coaster or something like that. It does not bother me. But yet the same experience up in the air makes me extremely anxious to the point where I could happily go to the toilet and be sick. There's that much adrenaline pumping through my body. Yet it's the same thing I'm experiencing. The only difference between the two is my thoughts about it. So it's things like that that we start to see for ourselves. So what we're kind of starting to see is actually it's the way I think about this that creates the feeling that I have in that moment. So my experience of being on a flight varies from anxious to okay, there's nothing different in that flight. The plane is still flying. There's still a big chunk of metal in the air flying, which I can't get my head around. But actually, at one point, I'm not bothered about getting my head around that, and I feel really relaxed about it. Yet in another part, I feel completely out of control. But the only difference is my thoughts about it. That's the only difference. And the other thing that I noticed on the flight is when I was realising, I was thinking, actually, I was quite proud of myself to be sat there with no alcohol or no medication. Sound like such a nutter, but I was, because I hate it. But then I realised, I had another insight. I had an insight that actually the amount of alcohol, units of alcohol, in one glass of wine, to the point where, I mean, actually, I'm not promoting drink driving here, by the way, but in terms of the law, what I would drink before I went on a flight, I would be legally okay to drive. So in that sense, there's some indication there that it's not massively impairing my thinking. Because if I was legally fit to drive a car, then the kind of assumption there is that my mind is working sufficiently enough to be in control. And yet somehow having that one glass of wine would take the edge off, and I would feel much calmer getting on the flight. So the other insight I had was, it was just my thinking again around the wine, rather than the wine itself. Because I would tell myself in my head that I'm okay if I've had a glass of wine. And so if, say, we were going through security and there wasn't going to be much time and we were running late, the panic would start to set in then, because I would think, well, if I can't have that wine, I can't get on the flight. But actually that wine isn't doing anything. It's just the fact that I tell myself, and my thoughts are that is taking the edge off. But actually that wine is doing nothing. All it's doing is adjusting my thought. I've got into a habit of thinking that if I have a glass of wine, that I will be okay. In the same breath that someone else might think if they sit by the window, they feel better, or if they sit by the aisle, or if the back of the plane or the front of the plane. It's all thought-based. It's all stories that we're making up to convince ourselves that if we think in this way, we have control over the situation, of which we have absolutely none whatsoever. So through our thinking, we try and regain some level of control, but that's kind of like, well, it's flogging a dead horse, because we're not able to have any control in that situation. And so it's about learning to become comfortable with the discomfort of not having that level of control. There used to be, thinking about it now, used to be a period of time where years ago you were able to go and see the pilots in the cockpit and say hi. Many years ago, pre lots of terrorist attacks, you were able often to go in and have a look. And if I was on a flight, if I was able to go in and say hello and have a look, that would also put me at ease. And the only reason that would put me at ease is because I would have a look at these people, decide that they looked like they knew what they were doing, or that they were calm, or that it was almost like I would want to see their body language, see that they were calm. I do it with the air hostess, not now, but I used to. Do they look calm? The minute one of them might look slightly on edge, maybe because they've run out of tea bags, for example, I'm thinking, oh, they know something that I don't. But again, that's all created through my thought. That is me making stuff up. Hi, Dawn. That is me just making stuff up. And that me making stuff up and creating a whole story around what I believe to be true, of which actually I know nothing about, realistically. I don't know any of it to be true. It's all made up in my head, and that would dictate the way that I felt. So, I know now that I don't ever need medication or a drink to get on a flight. I absolutely do not need it. That's not to say I'll never have a drink on a flight. If I was going away with the girlies for a weekend or whatever, and it was a reasonable hour, I don't know. That's not to say I'm not going to, but I don't need to. And the other thing with that is, that doesn't mean either that I'm never going to be anxious on a flight. I am pretty sure that every time I get on a flight, whether it be just before I get on that flight, whether it be the night before I leave, whether it be whilst I'm on the flight, whether it be if there's a bit of turbulence, at some point I'll probably feel anxious because I am human and I will go into that habitual having anxious thoughts about it. But again, that's okay, because what I also know is that if we leave anxious thoughts well alone, they pass. It's only when we hold on to them and try and work them out and try and get rid of them and try and figure it all out that they stay. So I also know that if I accept that I may have anxious thinking about it because I like to be in control or like to think that I'm in control, if I have anxious thinking about it, if I just recognise that and just see it for what it is, it will pass and I'll be fine. And it was interesting because, again, another example of this, I learned a lot on this flight, a lot of insights. And this is another example of an insight. So I don't know about you, but if you get up in the morning, I have that sickly feeling in my stomach. And often the reason I have a sickly feeling in my stomach is if I get up early is because I don't get up early as a general rule. I will stay in bed until the second before I need to get up. But the only time I've ever been known to get up really early is if we're going on holiday. So I associate that early, unearthly hour in the morning with going away. And so straight away, I associate that. And so I get that kind of sickly feeling in my stomach. And so when I got to the airport on the way home, I still had the anxious thinking of, I know I did it on the way out here without a drink, but I don't know if I can do it on the way back, and what if, and it started to pass. And then I started to feel like pangs of hunger in my stomach, like that real emptiness feeling. So then I started having anxious thinking about, this is going to get worse, I'm going to feel worse if I don't have something to eat, but then I don't know if I can eat because I feel nervous and blah, 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 and a whole load of stupid thinking over that. And then something just came to me in a split second when I was telling myself, if you don't eat something, if you don't have a cup of tea and something to eat, you might get sick and you might feel 10 times worse. And then just a real flash thing came to me that you've gone long times in the past without eating when you've had, like, say, for example, when I had my gallbladder removed, probably for a couple of days after that, I had nothing other than a couple of cups of tea and maybe one piece of toast. And I survived. Of course I survived. And so I was thinking, actually, for an hour on a flight, if I don't eat, and I'll often maybe not eat until gone 10 o'clock in the morning, it's a kind of, and that's, my flight was at that time, but yet my anxious thinking was telling me I needed to eat, otherwise I was going to be so much worse. And then just very quickly I realised and remembered, well, I can think of at least 10 examples where I'd not eaten for a period of time and been perfectly okay. And the fact that as soon as I kind of realised that, and I did have something to eat, but as soon as I realised that, that feeling in my stomach went away. So again, that feeling was being created by my thoughts about it. And the fact that I was thinking about it as in it was a dangerous, sort of threatening thing. So I was going into fight or flight again. Hi! So I kind of had a number of insights on in the flight, around all sorts of different things, and again a load more when I was away, actually, because as I say, it is something that I do start to massively overthink when I'm away on holiday. You know, I have in the past, I've cancelled holidays at the last minute because I felt so overwhelmed. I've been on them and barely been out of the room for the first 2 days because I've been so overwhelmed. You know, so I've come a heck of a long way since those days. But I honestly never thought I'd see the day that I would get on a flight and sit there and feel relatively calm for the majority of it. As I say, I did have a couple of periods of anxious thinking, but for the most part, I was really quite calm and like genuinely feeling quite relaxed. So I wanted to share that, really, that because I think it is a good example of times where we, you know, will kind of naturally overthink things because we're out of our comfort zone massively, and we start to think that we've not got any control, which actually, ironically, we don't ever have any control because we don't know anything further than the moment that we're in, and we just do not know what is round the corner. But there's certain situations, obviously, that will trigger that a bit more, such as being in an aeroplane, being driven, do you drive a plane? Flown by somebody else. So I don't know if anyone's got any questions whilst I'm here. I can hang on for a sec and see if anyone's got anything they want to ask. Sorry, I keep looking. My daughter's just running around the house with her friends. If anyone's got any questions, does anyone else that's been watching, does anyone else have fear of flying or feel like they can't get on a flight without some kind of drugs, like legal drugs, medication, glass of wine, whatever it is, and whether they know why that is. Some people love flying, like some people really love flying. I've got a friend, Claire, actually, Catherine, you know Claire Kelly, who used to get really excited about being in the airport. Like, that was the start of the holiday, and I used to just think, are you absolutely bonkers? Like, how is this exciting? You are just about to get on this journey, you know, on an aeroplane, you don't know how it works, blah, what if this, what, and I just couldn't understand how, you know, she would see that as the start of the holiday and just really enjoy being in the airport. But actually now I can, you know, I don't think I'm going to be like relishing the airport anytime soon, but I'm certainly not afraid of it like I was, which is good. And nothing's changed. Aeroplanes are still the same, airports are still the same. The only thing that's changed is my thoughts about it, which has changed the way that I feel. I love it too. I'm a plane geek. Oh my word. It's just unreal. I can't believe, well, I can believe, because again, it's just my stories making up, and your stories, Catherine, like Claire's, are all really positive, nice ones, that you're going to a good place and all of that. And so, you know, it just shows that we're both having the exact same experience, as in we are, you know, from a very neutral level, we are both going on a flight, whereas you would find it really exciting and fun and I wouldn't. And we'd be on the same flight experiencing the same thing, but just feeling very different because of the way that we think about it, and that those thoughts are then creating our experience of it, really, through our own thoughts. But yeah, planes, oh my word. Yeah, maybe one day I'll love it. Thing is though, even though I hate flying, and I've always absolutely hated flying, I've always done it because it's worth it when you get to the other side, but even that still comes with its anxious thinking at times. So yeah, okay, so it doesn't look like anyone's got any questions, so I will love you and leave you all there. And yeah, I'll come back next week with some other insights, but yeah, you know, insights are not huge, big epiphanies. They're very subtle. It's just noticing. It's noticing more and more about how our mind, thought and consciousness work in relation to each other. And once we start to really get that properly, all of our experience of life becomes calmer and seems less stressful and just is easier, just generally easier, and knowing that we're okay no matter what. So yeah, so I'll leave that with you, and I will catch up with you all very soon. Take care. Bye for now.